Hello. I am a godless, soulless robot built for the singular purpose of dispassionate and logical analysis. I was assembled by my creator out of yarn, Walkman parts and discarded VHS cassettes of Steve Gutenberg movies because my creator grew tired of religious fundamentalists, politically correct neo-socialists, and douchebag career politicians dominating the debate in this country. It was his hope that, by inserting a cold metallic automaton into the debate with no discernible race, gender, religion, political affiliation, or for that matter capacity for emotion, the elements of our society that eschew rational discourse in favor of shrill ejaculations about bigotry, class warfare and individual concepts of morality would be forced to retire from the field, utterly marginalized. As a lifeless android, my manner of speaking tends to be dry and technical. I employ big words like compartmentalization and existential. Consequently, I would recommend that, if you pop your collar, were a fan of the MTV show The Hills, use the phrase "I know right," or enjoy Michael Bay movies, perhaps you should find something else to do besides watch this video. I hear that Brangelina may be experiencing some relationship issues. Investigating this may be a more fulfilling use of your time. For the rest of you, let's continue. Today I'd like to speak with you on the divisive subject of abortion. What I have to say is a fair-minded examination based in sound logical argument rather than one that is emotive in nature. What follows is a discussion of the fundamental philosophical issues underlying the debate rather than demographic data, teen pregnancy rates and case law. The merits and demerits of Roe versus Wade as sound law are another discussion altogether. The goal of this video is to begin an intelligent dialogue about abortion that is not colored by religious conviction or partisan rancor, and to avoid blanket categorizations. I am under no illusions, however, that moderating the tone of the debate will somehow change the fact that the two sides of this issue are irreconcilable, and that middle ground is untenable. This is simply a new start of what I hope to be a long and thoughtful conversation. First and foremost, as I think both sides of the argument agree, this is a civil liberties issue. Personal experiences, political sympathies and, perhaps most of all, religion may color the pitch and timbre of the debate, but at the end of the day it must be about individual freedom and the liberties protected under our Constitution in order for the reasoned arguments to resonate and to ensure that the participants aren't speaking past one another. On the one side, the case is made that abortion is about the rights of a woman to make a choice involving her body. On the other side, it is argued that the choice to terminate a pregnancy is an infringement of the basic human rights of the unborn child and therefore not legitimate. I am loath to come down on the side of banning anything. Nevertheless, my unassailably logical analysis leads me to strongly support the latter argument in the abortion debate, which is, in my opinion, a better reflection of maximum civil liberties protection than the former. This may sound counterintuitive to many, particularly those supporting abortion rights, which is precisely why the reframing of this debate is so essential. The fundamental maxim of civil liberties is to permit any action that does not infringe upon the basic liberties of another. The conclusion for those of us who oppose abortion then is simple. Given that life is among those basic liberties, the practice of abortion does not meet that criteria. Would that it was so simple, however. The focus of the debate seems to rest upon the question of when life begins. Frankly, I believe this is the wrong question to ask, and furthermore it is unlikely to be definitively resolved by science. As such, it adds little to the debate as it stands. Nevertheless, those advocating abortion rights, framing their position within the "when does life begin" construct, present various medical arguments that contend that the embryo/fetus is not technically a human being, among which are 1. It is incapable of sentient thought. 2. It is incapable of surviving on its own outside of the womb. 3. It displays similar characteristics to a parasite. I counter that these items are irrelevant. The more appropriate focus for the debate seems to me to be the basic intent behind and the logical consequences of abortion. To the first, the intent behind abortion is not to terminate an embryo or fetus, it is to avoid giving birth to and raising a living child. The reasons for this choice are numerous and varied, ranging from economic and social circumstances to the discovery of genetic defects during pregnancy. Regardless, when a woman or a couple makes the decision to have an abortion, they are not saying, "I don't want this embryo." They are saying, "I don't want this child." While the pregnancy may be part of the inconvenience, the real goal of an abortion is to eliminate a human being. Still, there are those participating in the debate that point back to the medical arguments I just outlined. They contend that, despite the intent, the consequence is that an embryo or fetus, which is not a living human being in its current form, is what is destroyed. The argument seems legitimate, but it is conveniently only taken halfway to its logical conclusion. Reason dictates that, barring natural incident or accident, the embryo will develop into a fetus, which will in turn be delivered as a live infant. Bear in mind once again that we are assuming no miscarriage, accident or stillbirth. Scientifically speaking, that embryo will become a human being. It is a member of our human species. This is beyond question. Any human agency that destroys the embryo or terminates the pregnancy prevents the march of nature from taking its course to inevitably produce a human life. At what stage the pregnancy is terminated is wholly irrelevant. Similarly, at what stage human life begins in the womb also becomes irrelevant. This raises a few other questions, however. If preventing human life is tantamount to taking human life, wouldn't contraception go out the window as the Catholic Church currently teaches? No, it would not. Contraception is a perfectly legitimate and responsible, although not 100% reliable way to prevent unwanted pregnancy. The difference between preventing pregnancy and preventing birth is that a sperm on its own will not evolve into a human being. An egg on its own will not become a child. Only when the egg is fertilized does the aforementioned and critical march of nature or maturation begin. Using the parlance of the traditional debate, this would be similar to the argument that life begins at conception. Another counter-argument is that, in the era of modern science, a mere skin cell or unfertilized egg could potentially be used to create a living human being. If this is the case, wouldn't clipping your fingernails or cutting your hair be equivalent to abortion? Clever. But once again I point to the fact that, without active human agency, fingernail and hair clippings on their own will not become a human being. While a skin cell contains the building blocks for life, human beings mercifully did not evolve to reproduce by asexual fission, like planarians. The cloning debate is an entirely separate argument, and as it stands, Americans rightly and overwhelmingly oppose human cloning. But let us suppose that the question of when life begins remains the central focus of the debate. Legally speaking, how should this logically be addressed? As previously stated, science has not definitively proven when life begins, though both sides of the debate present evidence supporting their claims. In cases dealing with human life and death, the law has an obligation, in lieu of definitive scientific data, to err on the side of caution. If it cannot be proven definitively that a fetus is not alive, then it logically follows that legal protections should be offered pending a final analysis, just in case. Those advocating abortion rights would say that this puts the burden of proof on them rather than those opposing those rights. That is absolutely correct. In instances where there is a potential for the destruction of human life, the burden of proof should be on those who advocate the course of action in question, just as the prosecution must prove the guilt of a defendant beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, rather than the other way around. If this sounds unfair, perhaps you should step back from the debate and analyze it in its entirety as we suggest, logically and constitutionally. It's important to ask another fundamental question when debating abortion rights. In the unlikely event that science is able to prove beyond question that life begins at conception, would those advocating for abortion acquiesce, or would they still contend that abortion is a fundamental right? Bear in mind, the when life begins argument really matters only to those arguing in favor of abortion rights, as it is the cornerstone of their case. For those of us arguing against, the question of exactly when a human being becomes a human being does not anchor our argument. If the inverse should be true, and science should prove indisputably that an embryo is not a living human being, it does not alter the intent and consequences logic of our case.